Hello and welcome to the IEEE Standards Association seminar, IEEE 1588, from Standardization to Certification. This is the second in this series of webinars. My name is John Eidson. I will be the moderator. Let me give you a brief overview. First, we'll have an introduction to the speakers given by myself. Then I will present a few points on the background of 1588 and the 1588 Working Group activities. We will then have an introduction to the ICAP IEEE 1588 certification program given by Rudy Schubert. We will then have presentations from two telecom equipment vendors, one from Boris Zahir of Cisco and the second Jean-Fei Liu of Huawei. And then finally we will have question, answer, and wrap-up. This event is being recorded so that it can be replayed for those who couldn't sign on this morning. You may submit questions using the chat feature of WebEx, and at the end we hope to have sufficient time to answer all your questions. So you can submit them at any time and we will take them up at the end of the seminar. Next slide, please. So the speakers this morning: I am the moderator. I am the co-chair of the IEEE 1588 Working Group and a visiting scholar at the University of California, Berkeley. The second speaker will be Rudy Schubert. He is the Director of New Initiatives for the IEEE Standards Association, which includes the Conformity Assessment Program and the Industry Connections Program. The third speaker will be Boris Zahir, who is with Cisco, and he is the Senior Technical Marketing Manager. And the final speaker will be Jean-Fei Liu, who is a senior engineer at Huawei Technologies. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background on the 1588 standard for those of you who may not be familiar with it. The official title is the IEEE Standard for a Precision Clock Synchronization Protocol for Network Measurement and Control Systems. However, it's clear that it's being used for things far beyond what the title would indicate. There have been two editions of the standard to date. The first was published in 2002, the second in 2008. The 2008 edition is commonly known as PTP version 2. The major application areas, although certainly not the only ones, are industrial automation, power generation and distribution, data acquisition, including test and measurement, finance, and finally the area of most interest to people on this webinar is telecommunications. Next slide, please. So as you may know, the standard is currently open for revision. And this is the responsibility of the IEEE P1588 Working Group, of which I am the co-chair. You can see the URL there if you wish more information on that. That'll take you to our public website. This activity is sponsored by the IEEE's Instrumentation and Measurement Society, the Technical Committee on Sensor Technology, TC9, which is chaired by Kang Lee of NIST. The PAR, which is the Project Authorization Request, was approved on 4 June of 2013, and we expect to complete our work by the end of 2017. The officers of the working group are Doug Arnold of Meinberg and myself as co-chairs, Hans Weibel of the Technical University of Zurich at Winterthur as the vice chair, Silvana Rodriguez of IDT is the secretary, and John McKay of Progeny Systems is the editor. We have 5 subcommittees active to do the work on revising for the next edition. The first is the Upkeep Committee, which is in charge of general maintenance and consistency, as well as handling many of the interpretations and requests that have come in over the years. We have an Architecture Committee, which is looking at better ways to structure the standard and the protocol to enable it easier to bring in new features in the future. We have a management subcommittee which is looking at additional ways to manage 1588 systems. We have a high accuracy committee, which is looking to bring technology to permit accuracies to the sub-nanosecond level. Specifically, we are looking to bring in the White Rabbit technology developed at CERN in Switzerland. And finally, we have a security committee which is looking at ways to provide secure 1588 timing systems. Next slide, please. So the principal work items for the new edition, as I mentioned, to recast the specification as a layered architecture to allow us to add new features and new mappings to different transports more easily in the future. To bring IEEE 1588 and other related standards, particularly the 802.1 and 802.3 standards, into closer alignment. To provide security options. To provide high accuracy options, as I said, based on the CERN White Rabbit technology. To provide certain redundancy options, such as redundant masters and independent spanning trees. And for the management, we will definitely provide a standard MIB on which to base the use of management tools. Next slide. And with that, I will turn it over to Rudy Schubert. Rudy?
Hi, John, and thank you. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm going to provide an update of the IEEE Conformity Assessment Program, provide a little bit of a high-level perspective before we get into some of the specifics from our speakers at Cisco and Huawei. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this circle actually depicts a bit about the work within the IEEE Standards Association. The blue section up top there, which says standards development, John spoke about the 1588 working group and the development of the 1588 standard. Essentially, the heart of the work that the Standards Association does fits into that blue group. So 1588 and the hundreds and hundreds of additional standards that we work on fit into that core development of standards. In addition to that, we also provide different programs that support both the pre-standardization period and the post-standardization period. The pre-standards period, which is shown in green up there, we have programs such as Industry Connections. John had mentioned that I have a responsibility for that. Those are areas where standards may be or a technology may be in a very early stage, not quite ready for standardization, but interest groups form to develop projects and activities that eventually may lead to standards being developed. On the other side of things, with post-standardization, so once the standard is issued, what's involved with the implementation of it? We do actually do a number of services in that area, and principally that has to do with the conformity assessment program that we're discussing today. We can go to the next slide. So the Conformity Assessment Program is a Standards Association initiative. It's been around for a few years, and the 1588 program is actually the first program that we've actually completed and made available to the market, where we have a specific test plan. We work with a laboratory, Iometrics, with that noted at the last bullet there, and they execute testing programs for the program, and that will result in a certification of a product for meeting the specification that's been developed for 1588. This past year, and this was Cisco and Huawei, they were the first recipients of certifications under the program related to the packet master clock and packet slave clock implementation. And to date, we have focused on the ITU G.8265.1 profile for the program. Going forward, we are expanding the program to incorporate the G.8275.1 profile as well. So that's an addition that we have coming up this year as a part of the 1588 program. Go to the next slide, please. So a natural question is, why do companies get involved with conformity assessment and our conformity assessment program? Well, we see drivers both on the service provider side and the vendor side when it comes to the 1588 telecom work. From a service provider perspective, clearly the idea is to actually make it easier to understand how a product meets a particular standard. Very often people will say, yes, I comply to 1588, or my product meets all the requirements of 1588. But that can often be, somewhat interpretive and subjective in terms of how people, what people's individual views are of compliance. What the certification program does, it makes it very clear-cut as to what are the requirements, what are the metrics by which you meet those requirements, and it allows, much more of an apples-to-apples comparison to say that, yes, it actually has achieved a certain level of conformance to the standard. From a vendor perspective, the benefit is that if you do the certification program the one time, ideally all your customers will actually know specifically what your product meets or what it might not meet, what's applicable and what's not applicable. It becomes very clear-cut again. And the idea is to avoid, from a vendor perspective, needing to meet multiple interpretations from a service provider viewpoint of what might be necessary. So there's a lot of time and costs very often involved in improving out a product meeting a specification across multiple customers. Now, there's naturally going to always be some additional customized testing that a service provider may want, but the hope is that a vendor can much more quickly complete a set of tests that is going to be accepted on a broad basis. And again, overall, that should hopefully save time and money. Go to the next slide. So this slide just has a little bit more information. If you look at the little picture on the left-hand side, it's a little hard to see. That's actually the certificate itself, what it would look like. So Cisco and Huawei, in this case, have actually achieved certificates like this. And we do actually have a white paper out that describes a lot more detail about the 1588 Conformity Assessment Program as well. That white paper on the program is available through the Standards Association website. It can be downloaded through there. And that provides many more details about what's involved, much more than we could describe in a short webinar such as this. So we would encourage you to actually go to the link that is shown on the page there, and you can actually download that white paper for yourself to learn more details on the program. Go to the next slide. So this slide talks a little bit about next steps. As I mentioned, the testing that we've done to date has focused on the G.8265 profile from ITU. Where we're seeing the market go a bit more is towards phase and time aspects, and that's covered by the 8275.1 telecom profile. So we've actually just gotten underway with a pilot testing program. A draft specification has been put together that covers 8275. That is actually being reviewed and slightly modified as needed by a steering committee of experts, many of whom are from the 1588 working group who are looking at that. And using that test plan, we have a first product that is, our first set of products that are about to undergo testing just to validate and make sure everything is working as correctly within the test plan. So that has gotten underway, and anyone who's interested in that, certainly feel free to reach out to us at the Standards Association, or you can also talk directly to Iometrics Laboratory, and all that information can be found on the Standards Association website if you have an interest in being involved with the pilot testing that we'll be doing over the next 3 to 6 months. And go to the next slide. And so that concludes my section. Again, we welcome any input on the conformity assessment program, any interest. We're glad to answer any questions on that. And I should mention, too, that aside from the 1588 telecom, we also have quite a few other programs that are underway or in development right now within the Standards Association, covering additional telecom aspects, power engineering aspects, consumer products. The program really covers the full range of types of standards and technologies covered within the IEEE. So you'll probably be seeing more news about other programs coming out But for this audience, we at least wanted to give you that update on what the 1588 program is about and where it's headed this year. So thank you, and I will now turn it over to Waris from Cisco.
Thanks, Rudy. This is Waris Sagir from Cisco Systems. I manage the Cisco Service Provider Technical Marketing team, and I also manage the Cisco end-to-end solution, which is the Evolved Programmable Network. In today's call, I also have two of my colleagues, Elise Bedouin. She is the Senior Product Manager for end-to-end mobile backhaul as well as clocking, and clocking expert from my team, Dennis Haggerty. So next slide, please. So one of the interesting story about this certification was that I've been working with IOMatrix for some time. We were part of the initial pilot project for CE 2.0. And when Bob from IOMatrix mentioned, because we have been looking for an industry certification for the timing and synchronization, and he mentioned that something is coming up, we were pretty excited about it because for the same reasons which Rudy presented in his slide. That's exactly some of the reasons we wanted to have the vendor certification, to have an industry level certification for our products, because timing and certification, unlike CE 2.0, which is kind of becoming a common framework for carrier Ethernet, we wanted to have the same thing for clocking and synchronization. So industry certification was one of our main motivation to go and have a standard implementation across Cisco product portfolio. It helps us to have better interop with other vendors, but at the end of the day, what we really wanted to have is to reduce customer certification cycle, as well as which helps them to accelerate the selection process of the equipment. So those were some of the main motivation for us to go for the certification. Now, next slide, please. Now, in terms of our feedback, mobile backhaul, carrier Ethernet, IoT are the industry segments which clocking and synchronization are becoming critical every day. So it is across different industry segments. But one thing I have, at least based on our experience, customer awareness is extremely critical also. Clocking and synchronization is perceived as a complex topic. The skill set is really hard to find. So having that awareness and understanding customers across those different industry segments, those technologies are critical. That's something, one of the tasks which one of Dennis Haggerty, who's on the call, took the challenge, and he basically, for the first time, we searched the YouTube, and we wanted something to make it simple, and he published a deep dive on the clocking and synchronization from simple to advanced, and it has been perceived very well. So one thing we need to make sure is more and more customers are aware of those standards and technologies, because it is not OSPF or BGP, which people know a lot. That is something with time, if they understand it, it will really help them to understand the technology and implement them, and overall, then the technology becomes successful. So success of the technology heavily depends on the ease of use and for customer awareness. From certification perspective, we had a great experience with IOMatrix, and we found some issues in our implementation, which was exactly in line with what our expectation was, that we wanted to make sure that our implementation follows the common framework across the industry and help us to basically work well with other vendors. So that went pretty well. In terms of, however, for our customers to really get the benefit of this certification, one thing we have realized is that we need to get our entire product portfolio certified. So ASR 903 was our first product which got the G8265 certification. However, having our entire end-to-end backhaul portfolio from aggregation all the way up to the cell site, it would be critical to get the certification for the customers to really see the benefit of having those certification. So as of now, we haven't seen much feedback though from the customers, even though it is critical So at the same, once I think I'm very optimistic that once we have our entire portfolio certified and other vendors also go through the same, eventually it will help with the same point which Rudy brought up in his slide. It will help them to basically deploy deployments which will be much faster and help them with the selection process, reduce their certification cycles, and at the end, it would be basically helpful for them to deploy the services. Yeah, so that's it from my side. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Jingfei Lu, and I'm from Huawei, and I'm a senior engineer and also do some work about the standard. Okay, next slide. Okay, Huawei is a global company, and we have customers in telecom area and enterprise and consumer product industrial. And in the world, we have 160 plus thousand employees from 150 countries, and we have 140 plus countries using Huawei device, and also 20 plus research labs in the world, and 30 plus training centers in the world, and 50 plus technical support center. Okay, next slide. And standardization in telecom is a very important topic, especially for wireless applications such as from 2G, 3G, and in the future 4G and 5G. And the following table we have introduction about the requirement of wireless and frequency and phase and time. From this table, we know that the IEEE 1588 is a very important technical for standardization in telecom, and also will be widely applied. For the 5G, also we didn't get a clear answer about whether we need frequency and phase time standardization, but we think that in the future, the 5G will certainly require frequency and phase and time synchronization. Okay, next slide. And the ITUT Q13 start group 15 is a group for defining IEEE 1588 profile applied to telecom. And now we have three profiles, ITUT G.826.5.1. This is for frequency synchronization, and which is published in 2010. And this case only need to deploy PDP ground mask and PDP OC slave clock. No need to change the intermediate node between ground mask and slave. And widely used by many mobile network operators for WCDMA and LTE FDD wireless system. And the second profile is G.8275.1. This is a full PDP phase time synchronization, and we published in last year. And this case in all of the intermediate nodes to support the PDP function, include the network node and the wireless node. And also this case alone a long PDP chain, and maybe we can alone to deploy 21 boundary clocks. And also this case will be widely used and required by operators for TDD wireless system. And the third one is the ITUT G.8275.2. This is also for phase and time synchronization, but this is for partial PDP. We could publish in this year, but now we don't know yet. This case only needs some nodes to support PDP function, not all of them nodes to support PDP. And of course, the short PDP chains are targeted because of PDP noise to be filled and asymmetry caused by the network device or network traffic. And this case also can be considered or used by mobile operators for TDD wireless system, and the strong increase from wireless operators who lease transmission network device from others. So we think this IEEE 1580 profile in telecom have been or will be deployed in telecom for wireless application. Okay, next slide. Huawei is a global equipment provider supplying end-to-end network solutions that include fixed and wireless devices with 1588 capability. And all our equipment support 1588, e.g. Internet switch or IP router or OTN or XPON or XDSL and microwave and base station. We can have enable the building of end-to-end architecture in wireless environments. However, the 1588 protocol is very complex and requires strict validation procedure. The first point, the 1588 implementation and testing in our company is present in numerous products with various transmission media and hardware and software version. And for every product and every version, our engineers must perform validation testing. This is a huge work for test. And secondly, the value of IEEE 1588 certification. Even if strict validation of our equipment is performed in our labs, but when we deployment of equipment in multi-vendor environments may raise interworking issues due to different designs from different engineers. And secondly, even if Huawei equipment is compliant with PDP profile, some network operators could still require additional testing and potential modification due to limited knowledge of IEEE 1588. So we think the IEEE 1588 certification program by a third party is very helpful and useful for us. Okay, next slide. And we think the experts of ICAP have deep knowledge of the IEEE 1588 protocol and the telecom profile. Hence, the certification helps improve the technical knowledge of vendor engineers. For example, the test suite for G.8265.1, more than 600 test cases designed by Iometrics, is valuable for clock implementation and testing. It points out some important details of the protocol. And also equipment that pass the 1588 certification clearly have an improved quality, such as unsuitable design can be detected earlier and avoided. And also the tests in vendor labs are improved according to the certification test case. And third, the discussion between vendor and the network operators will be simplified. So now Huawei has already passed the certification for HUT G.8265.1. This certification is recognized by Huawei's customer and underlines Huawei's commitment to industry standards. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody, the speakers, Wallace, Rudy, and Jean-Fei. I'd like to remind the people on the call, if you have questions, please submit them using the chat feature of WebEx. So we have plenty of time to answer any questions you may have, and I will be moderating the questions and addressing the various speakers. So let me start with a couple that I've received. The first one actually is probably directed at myself. The question is, will the next revision of IEEE 1588 benefit from the experience of the ICAP testing program, and will it take into account new features defined in G.8275.1? And let me take the first one. Yes, indeed, the P1588 working group does benefit from the experience of the ICAP testing program. This happens in a couple ways. The first way is that we actually have members on the committee from Iometrics who conduct the testing. And so we do get feedback that way. And in particular, what this does is bring up questions of interpretation. where the standard is not clear. It's extremely difficult to get standards to be absolutely clear and interpreted the same way by everybody. So the testing program definitely helps our work. The second part of the question was, will it take account of some new features defined in the G8275.1 telecom profile? And again, the answer to that is yes. One of our ongoing tasks in the working group is to look at the various profiles and to see if they have introduced features which we would specifically for their industry, which we believe would be of benefit to all industries. And for those features, we are attempting to incorporate them into the next edition. And in particular, we have incorporated one of the features put in 8275.1 by Q13, and it will appear in the next edition, assuming it passes ballot. So that's one question. Let me address a question probably to either Rudy or Sebastian Yobert, who is also on the call. Sebastian is the chief engineer at IOmetrics, the approved test laboratory for the ICAP program. And this has to do with the next steps of the certification program beyond 8275.1. And could you give a little bit more detail about what's involved in that? Sebastian, why don't you do that? You're kind of the point person on this one.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Sebastian speaking. So first of all, as Rudy introduced during his part of the webinar, we are starting the pilot phase for G8275.1 telecom profile. So that pilot phase is open, and the companies can register to participate in this testing. Actually, the cutoff date is end of April. We have a large part of the test plan, as Rudy mentioned, that is available. So that is really the next step of the program coming in the coming weeks, I would say. Beyond that, as introduced by Jingfei, there is a third telecom profile, G8275.2, that is under definition by ITUT. So that is obviously a very good candidate for the next step of the program. We need to have, as an initial step, the standard fully finalized and released. So it's going to come in the coming months, I believe. And the third point that I wanted to mention is that we have ongoing discussion to cover also clock performance testing, because again, on the ITUT side, there are standards defining the expected performance of the clocks. So that's maybe something that could be considered as a future step of the program. So as you see, there are, let's say, several aspects that we can consider to for certification to make sure that the product reaching the marketplace are really according to the quality defined in industry standards.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. This next question probably should be answered by Juarez and Zhengfei. The question is, do you have requests from network operators to provide phase time ready equipment?
John, let me, from Cisco side,
Okay.
well, I cannot name the customer though, but I would say that we are getting traction now, and especially more and more clock timing and synchronization discussions are coming up, especially in the IoT industry, and obviously backhaul is always there. But I think it would be once we have G8275, it will become more relevant, and more customers will be driving towards that.
Okay, thank you, Juarez. Zhengfei, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, our company also requires the certification for the G.8265.1, because several operators they found there are several interworking issues in their network, and they need to know which one does not have problem. So the certification of G.826.5.1 is useful for the operator and for us. Also, I can't say the name of operator. And for the G.827.5.1, yes, recently we have received some requirement from operators because the 827.5.1 is published last year, and we received the requirement from operators because they plan to deploy the LT Advanced in the future, so they need to deploy the PTP, the clock with G.827.5.1. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Zhengfei. Again, let me remind you, if you do have questions, please submit them using the chat window. Meanwhile, I have another question. Again, this is directed to Boris and Zhengfei. Can you cite examples, or do you foresee large deployments of 1588 and mobile operator networks to deliver time synchronization?
John, and from Cisco side, they are looking at starting trials probably by the end of this year, especially for the LTE Advanced. So in those areas, by the end of this year, you may be seeing large deployments.
Okay. Zhengfei, can you add anything to that?
I'm saying the same with Boris, and I think the telecom operators mainly consider the deployment of LTE Advanced, so they need to deploy the 1588 the function in their network.
Okay. And let me address the next question that's been submitted to Sebastian again as the representative from IOmetrics, which is the approved testing laboratory for the ICAP certification program for 1588. Sebastian, the question that was submitted is, if a company wishes to participate in the pilot phase testing of G8275.1, they want to know how the testing will be organized and how they get involved.
Okay, so basically, as I mentioned, the registration to participate in the pilot phase is now open. So any company that is interested in participating can contact IOmetrics directly or can contact IEEE SA, and we will be in contact to organize the testing. The timeline is as follows. Basically, the registration is open up to the end of April. After that date, we will prepare the testing session, review the equipment options that are implemented, review the testing with the participating companies before starting the testing in our lab that is based in Silicon Valley, California. And basically, the testing will be organized in several cycles. About half of the test plan is going to be ready for the first cycle. So the companies will have the opportunity to test their implementation against this first part of the test plan, get feedback if there are points that needs to be addressed. And then we'll have very likely a second cycle. I think we're going to have only 2 of them with the second half of the test plan. And basically, it's a second series of test cases that the implementation will go through. And we expect at the end of those 2 cycles to have the entire test plan finalized and approved by ICAP so that we can announce, hopefully by the end of the year, the first certified implementations for this phase and time telecom profile defined in G8275.1. So that's really the process, for this pilot phase.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. We have one final question, which probably submitted, although please, if you have questions, submit them now so that we can get to them. This question is directed to myself, and the question is, if I want to participate in the activities of the 1588 working group, how do I do that? The working group is open to anyone who is interested and willing to contribute to the activities of the working group. Like all IEEE standards development processes, it's subject to the rules of the IEEE Standards Association. You can find out how to join. There was a URL in one of my early slides pointing to the public website of the 1588 working group. And if you go to that site, you will see that one of the items on that, in addition to showing the names of the officers and the copy of the PAR and things like that, there's directions on how to join. Basically, what you need to do is contact the secretary, who's Silvana Rodriguez of IDT, and she will send you specific instructions on how to open an account with the IEEE SA so that you can get access to our document repository. I might add that we hold numerous meetings on various aspects of the standards. Each of the subcommittees meets typically twice a month, generally at 8 o'clock Pacific time on different days of the week. The entire group meets the third Thursday of each month, again at 8 o'clock. Currently we're holding 3 face-to-face meetings each year. We just completed one in the San Francisco area in January. The next one is scheduled for Stockholm in May, and in Knoxville, Tennessee in late August. That's the general activities of the 1588 working group. The only other thing that I would suggest to you is that there's numerous conferences that address the use of 1588 in telecom. I'm sure you're aware of them. One of them just completed a week ago. That's WSTS. It was held here in San Jose. The next one coming up is the ITSF, which will be held in, Edinburgh in November. There is also a conference sponsored by the I&M Society, the International Symposium on Precision Clock Synchronization. If you look at ispcs.org, you will see the information on that. It will be held in October in Beijing, and this attracts vendors and developers of 1588 equipment, and it includes, among other things, a plug fest, which allows vendors to interoperate with others. This serves a different purpose than the ICAP certification. So I believe we have answered all the questions that have been submitted. Again, I wish to thank all of our speakers, Rudy, Waris, Zhangfei, and Sebastian from Iometrics. And we very much appreciate all of those who attended this webinar. There were attendees, as near as I can tell, from all over the world, which is encouraging. So we do thank you. I remind you again, this program is recorded, and you can go back and review it later. The IEEE will have it posted on the standards website. So thank you very much, and this will conclude this webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.